అవినాష్,
చెప్పుమా.
దగ్గరలో ఉన్న మెడ్ప్లస్ కు వెళ్ళి మెడ్ప్లస్ బ్రాండ్ మెడిసిన్స్ అని అడిగి కొనుక్కునరా. అక్కడ 50 to 80% తగ్గింపుకు వస్తుంది. మీరు తీసుకునే అదే మందులు, అదే నాణ్యమైన మందులు, కానీ సగం ధరకే.
What does the Constitution envisage when we say a secular state? Well, this is not to talk about contemporary politics, but 2 days back you might have seen the Tamil Nadu Governor making a statement that secularism is a European concept, etc., etc. You might have read in the newspaper. This is not the precise platform to recollect everything what he has said. I'm sure some of you may be from that state also. Well, but this has been the criticism on Indian Constitution for quite some time. That secularism is alien to India. It's a Western concept. It's easy to, if you blame it as Western, it's easy to discard anything in our country. Because in our society, we have a hypocrisy. We love to go to the Western world to study and work, but we call ourselves truly anti-Western when it comes to ethos. Well, this hypocrisy runs large on the Indian society. So therefore, is it an alien concept? So let me begin what Jawaharlal Nehru once said. It is difficult, it is extremely difficult to build a secular state in a religious nation. Every Indian, most of the Indians are religious, and it's extremely difficult to build a secular edifice, a secular constitutional edifice in a deeply religious society where religion dominates our private life and even the public life. Quite often we do not understand the exact contours of religious freedom. We have seen in Hyderabad a few days back when the government wants to impose certain restrictions on the idol immersion in the Hussain Sagar. I think you came 2 days back. I don't know whether all of you have seen Hussain Sagar other than those who are from this part of the country. Well, Hussain Sagar is used for idol immersion. After the High Court has imposed certain restriction, government wanted to restrict. There has been a hue and cry. Who are you? We are in a free country. We have religious beliefs. Who are you to stop us from idol immersion? So immediately the media asks, does the government have a right to intervene? Can the courts intervene in the religious affairs, religious practices of individuals in a country where religious freedom is enshrined in the Constitution as a fundamental right? So this comes quite often. Quite often we encounter where should be the boundaries be drawn? Where should the state's ability to regulate ends? Where should the freedom for a citizen to practice religion end? So to understand this, we have to get into the historical roots of how the Constitution of India evolved into a secular nation. It was an imperative of the freedom struggle to mobilize people of all kinds, all castes, religion, language, faith, tradition, etc., etc., to mobilize against the British rule. All of you are aware that our country is a complex nation with an unbelievable diversity. In every aspect of human life, we have diversity. You won't get the Kerala food. Well, you will get the Kerala food in Hyderabad, and you can get even Italian food in Hyderabad. That's a different story. You can get a Japanese food. But the food differs from Kerala to Tamil Nadu to Telangana, and Telangana to Maharashtra. So not just the food. I will tell you a very interesting change in the religious, in the practices also. In the Telangana, this and Andhra Pradesh form part of the same land, Telugu land. But a maternal uncle, a girl marries a maternal uncle in Andhra Pradesh. It is acceptable practice in Andhra Pradesh to marry a maternal uncle, but it is absolutely unacceptable in Telangana. On the contrary, the maternal uncle takes the bride to the wedding stage. So it is the responsibility of the maternal uncle to take the bride. So such is the diversity of our practices. The way we live, the way we practice, the way we behave, believe, there's unbelievable diversity. So it was a necessity during the freedom struggle to unite people of such diverse character, diversity in language, ethnicity, belief. I'm not talking about Sam Petroda diversity. Well, you might have seen Sam Petroda said, Northeasterners look like Chinese, North Indians look like British Westerns, West Indians look like Arabic, and unfortunately or fortunately, South Indians look like Africans. I don't know how Sam Petroda looks like. That's a very difficult proposition. So that is a very foolish interpretation of diversity. I am not talking about the diversity of that. I am talking about the diversity in terms of every aspect of life. So not just the way you look at, so that's not the point which I am talking about. So in a diverse character of India, it was an imperative for the leaders of the freedom struggle to promise a democratic, secular nation so that everybody will feel that I am part of this great land. I am part of this great country. So I'm sure some of you might have read during your civil service examination, what is the European construct of nationalism and Indian construct of nationalism. I wrote a piece in Quint. Some of you can read later. If you just type K. Nageshwar in Quint, you'll get all my articles which I have written. So Quint, not print, Quint. So I have written on 15th August, what is nationalism and who is a nationalist. In fact, after this lecture, I'll be writing on the same topic after 2 days also. Normally, I have an habit of preparing for a lecture and using it multiple places. Not just speak here, but again later write also. So that will remain as a learning experience. So writing is a very interesting learning experience. As young officers, my appeal to all of you is start, if you are not doing it, start noting down your feelings, experiences, your encounters on a daily basis, on a regular basis, however busy you are. After 10 years, after 20 years, at least after retirement, it will be a great source of knowledge, information, or at least your own personal happiness. Some of you can write a book, or some of you can write a blog, or some of you can use these experiences later. So make it a habit. The research also tells that writing has even health impact also. It acts like a mindfulness. Well, it is also a form of meditation. If you are even, certain research tell you that people experiencing even pain, acute pain due to terminal diseases also, get relief by writing. So writing is a great psychological exercise to keep you peaceful, keep you happy, keep you enthralled every time. So coming back to this, so what is the difference between European nationalism and Indian nationalism? In Europe, we have seen a nationalist is defined in terms of whether he or she is an English-speaking, French-speaking, whether he is a Protestant, Catholic. So the religion, language defined nationalism in the evolution of European nationalism. Well, of course, countries like some of the European countries are transforming into multi-ethnic nations. But that was how that nation was defined. On the contrary, India's freedom struggle was all-inclusive, all-encompassing. So therefore, the secularism, the roots of the secularism emerges out of the constitution, not just the constitution, but it comes out of the ethos of the freedom struggle. Then comes the independent India. Quite often people argue that the word secular is not there in the constitution. I'm sure you might have read in the newspaper this controversy that the word secular is not there in the Constitution. It is a postscript to the Constitution. It was a latter-day addition, that too during the dark days of emergency, 1976, through the 42nd Constitutional Amendment, which was strongly resisted during the emergency for many of its features, not for the secularism, but for other features. So this is the popular argument. But this argument, does it hold true? Is it good? Is it correct argument? So I'll tell you a couple of things to substantiate my argument. I'm sure after that, I request you to also speak and interact, because you are the finest brains of our country. I'm sure you need not be subjected to a monologue by me. So I certainly give sufficient time, or you can also stop me whenever you want, because this need not be a one-side communication. So coming to this, so my argument is, whether it is mentioned in the Constitution of India when it was originally drafted, or when it is not, or is it a postscript? Factually, it is true, it is a postscript. There was no mention of the word secular, or there is not even a mention of the word socialist in the preamble of the Constitution. Well, it was added through a 42nd Amendment to the Constitution in 1976. Factually true. But what is not true is, because before it was added to the Constitution, it was not secular. So why is this argument being brought in? So the moment you create a kind of an opinion that secularism is not an original feature of the Constitution, but it was only a subsequent thought, subsequent addition, then it becomes easy to remove it also. One thing which is part of any, if you build a house, the basement cannot be removed, but anything can be removed inside. You buy a table, it can be removed and another table can be brought in. So there is a deliberate attempt to create this impression that secularism is not the original character of the Constitution, just because it was not mentioned. But in fact, in 1994, you might have read during examination, I'm sure you have read it, the famous S.R. Bommai case, S.R. Bommai and others versus Union of India and others. In this historic verdict, I'm sure if you might have read, if you read a couple of Supreme Court judgments, if you have time and patience, which runs into hundreds of pages, I really don't know why each judgment should run into hundreds of pages with extremely complex grammar. So there is a debate also in judiciary, why can't the judgment be simplified also? So to have that kind of a mystic opinion, you need to make it complicated. So, but if you read the Keshavananda Bharati verdict, the verdict on right to privacy, S.R. Bommai judgment, Indira Sahani verdict, if some of these verdicts, if you read, we will understand what is the essence of the Constitution. Well, in this historic verdict, it was clearly mentioned, notwithstanding the fact that secularism was not there in the original Constitution. Secularism is embedded into India's constitutional philosophy. Well, it was not mentioned and defined, essentially because it's an elastic concept and better left undefined. So therefore, what did the S.R. Bommai verdict say? What was implicit was made explicit by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment. So this is the critical statement which the Supreme Court has made. What was implicit was made explicit by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment. So it was already mentioned. Then why was it not mentioned then? There was a discussion on that also. If you read the Constituent Assembly debates, I am sure if my memory is correct, Professor K.T. Shah proposed an amendment to the draft in the Constituent Assembly to introduce the words secular, federal, and socialist in the preamble of the Constitution. He was emphasizing this needs to be mentioned given our experience, he was referring to the experience of partition, the communal carnage and the hatred that the nation has witnessed during the partition. So given this experience, he says, we need to explicitly mention the words secular, socialist and federal. Well, Ambedkar replied, and this is now being used, that as if Ambedkar was against using the word secular. Ambedkar did not respond to the secular and federal, but his reply was more about socialist. So what did Ambedkar say? Ambedkar was not against socialist. He only said, at this point in time in history, we may think that the socialist organization of state and society may be advisable today or even tomorrow. But who knows after some time? So when we give the liberty of thought, expression, faith, and liberty and freedom of all these, then why can't we leave it to the people of India to decide what kind of social and economic organization they would like to have? That was the intention of Ambedkar to discard the amendment, move to introduce the word socialist. But and he also said, well, mentioning it is superfluous. So if you read the constitutional provisions, the fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy, they clearly indicate the socialist character of the Constitution. They clearly indicate the secular characteristic of the Constitution. Why do you need to make it explicit again? It is superfluous, it is redundant. This is what Ambedkar said. Well, there are three streams of thought in the Constituent Assembly debates. The first stream of thought was led by people like Professor K.T. Shah, who later contested against Dr. Rajendra Prasad to be the first president of India and lost miserably. So he led a team of people in the Constituent Assembly who wanted this to be explicitly mentioned. And there is a second team who wanted Indian Constitution to have a religious overtones also. People like H.V. Kamath, and there are many others. No, the names are not so important. This is the second stream. There is a third stream represented by Jawaharlal Nehru, Ambedkar and others who said this need not be mentioned. So the third stream prevailed in the final document adopted. So therefore it was considered that mentioning explicitly the word secular was not a necessity, given the fact that many constitutional provisions clearly reveal the secular character of the Constitution. If that is a question, how many times the Constitution says India is a democracy? That doesn't mean India will not be the democracy. So the adult franchise, the Representation of People's Act, all this clearly indicate that India is a democracy, whether it is clearly mentioned or not. So therefore, if you look at the citizenship articles related to citizenship, articles related to freedom of religion, article related to non-discrimination on the basis of caste, color, creed or religion, etc., and not to use the public taxes for patronizing any particular religion. So all this, what does it indicate? The freedom to profess, preach and practice religion of your choice. And for that matter, the very concept in the preamble, liberty of thought, belief, faith, action, this basic liberty itself indicates that India is a secular constitution, whether it is explicitly mentioned or not mentioned. So in fact, even that controversy was laid to rest by the Supreme Court S.R. Bommai verdict. But even before Supreme Court adjudicated, all of you know that the Supreme Court pronouncement is the law of the land. It's a constitutional court. When I was in legislature, many of our legislators used to think that they are supreme. I used to take them a class. We are not supreme. The Constitution is supreme. They never used to accept me. I said, what do you mean? We are elected by the people. When people are supreme, we are elected. So even you may be elected. So I used to tell them one word, Keshavananda Bharati. Every time when they raised this issue, I said, read Keshavananda Bharati verdict. Even the basic structure of the Constitution of India cannot even be amended by the Parliament of the country. And secularism form part of the unamendable feature of the Constitution of India. So even the Parliament has no right to drop the word secular or to ignore the secular features of the Constitution. I'll give you a couple of more examples. There was an interesting debate in the Constituent Assembly. I'm sure many of you might have read. Let us begin the Constitution in the name of God. So there was a debate. People like H.V. Kamath, several others raised, let us start the Constitution in the name of God. Because in India, we are deeply religious people. So everything we do in the name of God. So even there are many people, even before eating food, they offer something to the God first and then eat. Not that the God eats it, but they eat it, but they eat it in the name of God. So this was the discussion. It was fiercely debated and subsequently put to voting also. And Constituent Assembly rejected this thesis that we cannot call the Constitution, begin the Constitution using the word in the name of God. If it is not secular, why will it do? It may not be explicitly mentioned, but the very fact that the Constituent Assembly voted against using the word invoking God in the Constitution, then there was a debate on taking the oath in the name of God. So people, I don't know whether you also take oath as civil servant. I think you take oath, am I right? So we, as a legislator, we took oath. So we will have in the name of God, let the oath be in the name of God. Then it was debated whether it is secular or anti-secular. Then finally Constituent Assembly came to the conclusion that the oath refers to the personal beliefs, not the characteristic of the state. So if we mention in the oath, it doesn't signify the character of the Indian state, but it only talks about the sanction for the person. If I take the oath in the name of God, the belief that I will adhere to it. I don't know how many of they are doing it, that's a different case, but at least believe that you adhere to it. So finally Constituent Assembly accepted to include in the name of God in the oath. But again, there is a caveat. There is also another alternate method also, without even mentioning the name of God. So in the name of your own conscience also you can take the oath. So what does it mean? So while recognizing God in the personal life, not in the public life, the Constitution also recognizes the people's conscience which doesn't believe in the existence of God also. Or for that matter, they don't want to take oath in the name of God because they know it pretty well that they will anyhow violate it. So that may be the reason. Well, I am anyhow violated, why should I take the oath in the name of God? So that was the spirit of the Constitution. So all this, what does it indicate? It indicates that whether you name it as secular or not, Indian Constitution is a truly secular Constitution. So this is the first part of my lecture. Then comes the question. The other argument is, India majority are Hindus. Hinduism is inherently secular. Hinduism is inherently universal. When majority of these countrymen believe in a faith which is inherently secular, why should it be a secular constitution? This was another question. Well, I am not going into the debate. I am sure, I don't know about other religions much, there are several universal secular features in the Hindu constitution. Hindu religion. I am sure all of us agree there are several things. In even Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, anybody can pray any god they want. It is I who create that devotion towards that God. This is what the Lord Krishna says. So even, I'm sure some of you may be knowing, Mahabharata was written in over 1 lakh slokas. I think around 1,700,000. Vedavyasa was dictating the Mahabharata. and Lord Ganesha was writing. After some time, Lord Ganesha got bored. तो ये क्या है आप इतना बड़ा बोलते? Why do you tell it so long? This is a problem with your poets. Can't you not tell in a brief way? It is only a small story of children of cousins fighting with each other for a kingdom. Why should you drag it so much? So can't you not tell it in a very brief way? Then Vedavyasa says, Lord Ganesha, why brief? I'll tell it in half sloka. Not just the essence of Mahabharata, but the essence of all the dharma, all the text. And he said, Paropakaraya punyaya papaya parapidanam. This is the one sentence he said, Paropakaraya punyaya. Doing good to others is the punya. And what is sin? Doing harm to the people. Can there be any philosophy which is more universal than this? If you read the Jallikattu judgment of Supreme Court, they quoted Isha Upanishad, which said, no creature in this universe, forget about man, no creature in this universe has a right or monopoly over this universe. So no, every creature has a right to exist. Not every Indian, not just human beings. But Isha Upanishad says, every creature in this universe has an equal right to exist in this universe, and no creature can seek supremacy. Well, I am not a scholar in religion, but there are several such facets of Hindu religion which talks about equality, liberty, fraternity, universality, and many other secular features. There is no dispute about it. But does it qualify to be the religion of the state? So I just quote Sardar Patel, because Sardar, if you quote Nehru, there will be a lot of quarrel. So therefore I do not intend to quote Nehru. Sardar Patel is certainly not a leftist by any chance. So Sardar Patel, in a reply to B.M. Birla, when B.M. Birla asked to declare Hindustan as an Hindu state, then it was Sardar Patel who said, it is not correct. The state belongs to all in our country. So the state belongs to all. Ambedkar in fact says, it is wrong, the majority thinks it as a divine right to rule the minority in the way the majority wants. If the minority wants a share in the power, it is considered as communalism. If the majority wants to monopolize power, it is considered as nationalism. This is what B.R. Ambedkar said. Nobody can call B.R. Ambedkar as minority appeasement politics. I am sure nobody can dare to accuse. You can criticize Gandhi, but you cannot criticize Ambedkar. If you criticize, you cannot go out also. So that is the fear everybody has in the political system for good reasons. A great man who is a visionary by every sense, who said, many people think Ambedkar as only the champion of the downtrodden, champion of the socially marginalized. It is true that he was the champion of the socially marginalized, but he was the champion of everybody, not just the caste. He said the nation's progress is measured by the extent of progress the women of that country has achieved. This is what Ambedkar said. He did not say scheduled caste women or scheduled tribe women. He said women. The measure of the progress achieved by a country is defined by the extent of progress the women of that country have achieved. This is what Ambedkar said. And unfortunately, in our country, Ambedkar is also a misunderstood philosopher for several reasons. So therefore, my point here is, well, it's true that a religion may be universal, a religion may be very liberal, but that doesn't mean the state religion should be, a state should be a theocratic state. So this is the background in which India's secularism is defined. But, well, what is that? So in fact, the Tamil Nadu governor mentioned another thing also. In Europe, there was a confrontation between the church and the political authority and the religious authority. So therefore, this secularism has evolved there. Well, I think, subject to correction, in UK, the king is not just the head of the government, he is the head of the church also. Am I right? So I think, so therefore in Europe, there was a fight between the church and the political authority and the religious authority. Therefore, the concept of secularism has evolved in the West to de-link the church from the state. But in our country, there was no such confrontation. Well, I agree with that to an extent. But how should you derive the answer? That is the reason Indian concept of secularism, both in theory and practice, is not similar to the Western concept in certain sense. We have taken a permissive attitude towards religion. In fact, Justice Chinnappa Reddy once said, Indian constitution is not supportive of religion, but it takes a permissive attitude towards religion. Because religion is a religion, India is a deeply religious society. Therefore, the detractors of secularism often argue that secularism is anti-religion. But to understand the proper concept of the secularism is not against any particular religion. Secularism in theory and practice doesn't want an irreligious society. It is not agnosticism or atheism. Secularism is often confused with atheism. It is often confused with agnosticism. It is not an anti-religious concept. It doesn't indulge in any bashing, religion bashing. Secularism doesn't advocate, doesn't envisage an irreligious society. But what does it say? It only says, secularism says the state has no religion. Except that it doesn't say anything. It only says state has no religion. So therefore state cannot patronize any particular religion. State cannot discriminate any particular religion. State cannot discriminate any citizen. On the name of religion, state cannot patronize any religion to the exclusion of the other. When I use the word state, we know it is used in the political science concept. State includes government, courts, etc., all ruling authorities constitute the concept of state. So the state doesn't envisage an irreligious society. Should people believe in religion? Should people not believe in religion? It is the personal prerogative of an individual, because our constitution allows every citizen of India to profess, practice and propagate their own religion. Not just profess. You can profess, practice and propagate. So therefore in Indian concept, religion not just include religion per se, it also includes the traditions, customs and rituals associated with the religion also. Because they also constitute the religion, because our constitution makes it a fundamental right, not just to profess religion, but to practice and propagate religion. So therefore, Indian constitution doesn't militate against the religion. It doesn't advocate annihilation of religion. It doesn't believe in taking on religion. It only says the state is diverse of religion. State has no religion. Well, it has even diluted to the extent of equal respect to all religions. Now our politicians define secularism as equal respect to all religion. That's the reason when Chief Minister take oath, all religious prayers are also recited. Well, that is not the actual concept of secularism, but that is how the secularism is practiced in India. If you have seen any Chief Minister taking oath, normally if he belong to quote-unquote secular parties, they take oath with the blessings of all religious scholars. So therefore they tell their electorate that we treat all religions alike. So we treat all religions alike. So we are equal to all religions. But equidistance from all religions is different from equal treatment of all religions. Actually, the secular constitution advocates equidistance, or rather distant from religion. But in practice, it is being diluted to equal respect for religions. Well, that is a part of the secularism. Equal respect for all religions, tolerance to all religions, certainly form part of the secularism, but that is not the everything of secularism. So it is a subset of secularism, but it can't be a superset of secularism, to speak in mathematical language. So therefore, well, whatever it may be, still the basic underlying concept is the state has no religion. So overt religious practices associated with the state functionaries is also condoned in our country. No court has said you should not take oath by offering religious prayers. Well, nobody offering religious practices, because as Chinnapreddy said, a constitution and India's jurisprudence have taken a permissive attitude towards religion. So what does it mean? Permissive means, okay, granted, kya hota? So Indian people are religious, how can we stop them? So therefore, the demarcation that has to be made between the personal belief and faith of a person in the offices of state and the public posturing, one has to make a clear demarcation. But quite often it is not practiced, especially when it comes to the majority religion. So because we take it for granted that. But the fundamental concept doesn't change. If you are a judge, in your personal life, you may believe in Vedic Dharma, you may have your life, personal life, dictated by Hindu religious text. But when you go to court, you don't deliver judgment based on Vedas or based on Hindu epics. You deliver judgment based on the Constitution of India. If you are a practicing Christian, you may practice Bible and you may lead a biblical life, but when you go to court, you don't give the judgment based on what Bible says. You will deliver the judgment based on the Constitution of India. Similarly, you may be a true believer in Islam, but you don't deliver the judgment based on Islamic laws. So this is a simple operational definition of secularism. How your personal life and professional behavior need to be distinguished